Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Chasing the Cup. I am your host, E11, and in this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the races from Talladega. I'll also go over the news, and I'm going to preview this weekend's races at Dover. But first, let's take a look at the results from Talladega. Kyle Busch gets his first super speedway win since 2008, and he's followed by Ryan Blaney, who once again comes up short in second. Chris Buescher finishes third. Chase Briscoe finishes fourth. Brad Keselowski finishes fifth. Eric Jones finishes sixth. William Byron finishes seventh. Christopher Bell finishes eighth. Daniel Suarez finishes ninth. And Todd Gilliland rounds out the top 10. And in my opinion, this was a pretty good race for the most part. There was 2x2 racing throughout the pack, and unlike Daytona, there was actual 3-wide racing. The drivers were actually able to go 3-wide at Talladega, unlike Daytona, but they were in kind of a gridlock during the first two stages. But in the third stage, all the drivers seemed to get more aggressive, and that led to a wreckfest toward the end of the race, which knocked out several of the cars that were in contention. And we gotta talk about that big crash between Ryan Preece and Kyle Larson. It started off with Chastain and Gregson. Noah Gregson was having a fantastic day, but during the first overtime attempt, Gregson was on the outside of the front row going into turn 1, and Chastain was behind him, and Chastain decided to squeeze his way into the middle. He and Gregson made contact, and that sent Gregson into the wall and carnage behind them, and that led to the Preece and Larson crash. Preece was trying to make his way through the wreckage without getting wrecked, but then Kyle Larson crossed his path, and Preece slammed right into the side of the 5, likely not driver's side, and man, that looked gnarly. The camera was shaking, the driver was shaking in the car. Man, that looked rough. It even knocked the camera out of place. That was a hard hit. And you could tell how hard it was because the door bars broke. And usually that does not happen, so it was a hard hit. Both of them seemed to be okay. And on that final restart, Ty Gibbs ran out of fuel, and Bubba Wallace was blocking Ryan Blaney hard. And that led to Bubba getting turned and a massive pileup ensuing behind them. And Kyle Busch was able to steal the victory. So a lot of drivers making some aggressive moves, and that led to carnage on the racetrack. Typical Talladega, but it got a little too messy at the end, probably because, as Kyle Busch said, there's no respect in the garage area. And I think NASCAR needs to make some tweaks to the Gen 7 Super Speedway package, because it was not near as good as it was with the Gen 6 when they had the wicker bill, and a lot of drivers complained. But now that the racing isn't as good, the fans seem to be complaining. So NASCAR really needs to find that sweet spot where it is both safe and entertaining. But overall, it was still a pretty good Talladega race in my opinion. And for the Xfinity race, Jeb Burton gets his second career Xfinity Series win, and he's followed by Sheldon Creed in second, Parker Kligerman in third, Cole Custer in fourth, Brandon Poole in fifth, Caesar Baccarala in sixth, Parker Retzlaff in seventh, Gray Gaulding in 8th, Joey Gase in 9th, and Josh Williams rounds out the top 10 about a month after the Atlanta deal. And man, what a crazy race that was. Stage 1 was very entertaining, but then it started going crazy in Stage 2 with Dexter Stacy's hard hit into the inside wall and Blaine Perkins' flip. He flipped like 6 to 7 times. It was violent. That was a violent wreck. Luckily, he made it out okay, and he was transported to the hospital for further evaluation just to be safe, and he was released yesterday during the Cup race. And then in the final stage, in the closing laps, there was a massive pile up, taking out nearly all the field, and Daniel Hemrick flipped upside down onto his lid. But luckily, some of the cars were able to survive the carnage. But when there was no carnage going on, the racing was awesome. It was beginning to look like it was going to be one of the best super speedway races of all time until it got super crazy. Man, it got crazy fast with all the flipping and all the crashes. And overall, a very chaotic weekend weekend at Talladega, with all the flips in the Xfinity Series race and all the carnage in the final stage of the Cup race. NASCAR needs to make some tweaks to the Super Speedway package for Cup, but I think they got a perfect combination for the Xfinity Series, except maybe making some changes to the package to make it safer. But besides that, the racing is near perfect for the Xfinity Series. And so with that out of the way, let's get to the news. Greg Van Alst, the winner for the ARCA Menard Series race at Daytona, will be making his Xfinity Series debut at Atlanta in July for Alpha Prime Racing. The NASCAR All-Star Race fan vote is now open, and you can vote on NASCAR's website. Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham will join Richard Petty and Darrell Waltrip as dignitaries for the NASCAR All-Star Race. Jeff will be the pace car driver, and Ray Evernham will wave the green flag as the honorary starter. Prize Picks has become an official fantasy sports partner of NASCAR. Johnny Sauter will be replacing Caden Honeycutt at Roper Racing. Bommarito Automotive Group will be sponsoring Eric Jones at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Shaq will be headlining the Sonoma pre-race concert under his alter ego DJ Diesel. Austin Dillon has been penalized after the Martinsville race for violating sections 14.6.1 and B, which cover the underwing assembly mounting and underwing stay assembly hardware. Keith Rodden has been fined $75,000 and suspended from the next two Cup Series Championship points events. The team and driver have been assessed with a loss of 60 points and 5 playoff points. Garage 56 has completed its final test session at Sebring before heading to Le Mans. Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch have been named as the honorary starters for the Goodyear 400. Sam Hunt and brothers Osborne will be performing during the Portland race weekend. NASCAR is committing to net zero operating emissions by 2035 with the launch of a new impact platform. Some of the priorities as part of this will be the development of a new sustainable racing fuel, comprehensive recycling across tracks and offices, and EV charging station infrastructure at tracks. And a lot of people were thinking that this would have been the end of the V8 in NASCAR and them switching to electric. That does not seem to be the case, because they are investing into a new fuel instead of going all electric. There are definitely some alternative fuel sources out there, but I think NASCAR is looking to move away from fossil fuels for their racing fuel. And finally, we have the Martinsville TV ratings. FS1 got a 1.26 rating and 2.218 million viewers for this year's race, which is an increase of 11% from last year, which was ran on Saturday night, which shows that although Saturday night racing is popular, they pale in comparison to Sunday races with the TV ratings. And I'd say with Chase Elliott back, that also helped the ratings a little bit, but in my opinion, this was not a fair comparison because of the two different scheduled times, with last year being on Saturday night and this year being on Sunday in the day. The big test will probably be what the rating is after Talladega, which I'll cover next week. And so that's it for this week's news. Now it's time to preview this weekend's races at Dover. Starting off with the Xfinity race, we have the A-Game 200. The race will be 200 laps and 200 miles, and the race will be on April 29th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And so for my pick, I'm going to go with John Hunter Nemechek. He has been fast in that number 20 for Jug Gibbs Racing, and I think he'll go back-to-back on tracks that are mile less by winning at the Monster Mile. And finally, for the Cup race, we have the Worth 400. The race will be 400 laps and 400 miles, and the race will be on April 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And so for my pick, I'm going to go with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott was the fastest car last year and was fast on all of the concrete tracks like Dover and Nashville, and he was so close to winning at Bristol if it wasn't for Chris Buescher hanging on with older tires because there was no tire wear. But besides that race, Chase Elliott was able to win both Dover and Nashville last year, and I think this time, he'll go back-to-back by winning at Dover. And so that's it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe for more. And if you're going out to Dover this weekend, I hope you have a good time, and if you're not, have a good time wherever you are, and I'll see you next week.